Righto, so yeah, thanks for coming along, guys, and also the team in Tallinn who are online here. This week we're going to have a look at the basics of creating a model, an object. I mean, ArchiCAD has lots of objects, but there's plenty of times where you need something a wee bit different and supplier doesn't have it, or you can't find it, so or it's not in the format that ArchiCAD recognises. So if you get really stuck, you can model something up yourself. It's not as hard as it looks, and we're not going to get into like the GDL programming side of making objects. This is just simple using native ArchiCAD tools to make an object and save it so that you can use it. So if we start with just like, I might just make a table. So we'll make a table with a bit of a shape and 4 legs and a little crossbar or something underneath it. So where are we? First of all, we'll just create the shape of the top that we want to use. I'll just put it on the ArchiCAD layer just for ease of management. And when you're modeling too, the layer thing's not really that important because you take everything and save it to a separate object anyway, so it doesn't keep the layer references or anything like that. It just becomes a new object on its own. So I'll just create a bit of a shape for the top of this. Well, that's our classic kidney-shaped table. And then, so now this is how we want the top to look. So now we're going to make the table just as though we were building an object or a building or whatever. So, oops, that's over here. Grab the slab tool for making the top. Choose a material. Make it wooden. Set a thickness, so if we say it's going to be, say, 25 mils thick, and a height, so we want it to be, say, 600 from the ground to the top. Put down the current floor. We'll make it say a wooden surface. So if we make it something that looks like this. Get our pins nice and tidy. And okay. Just magic wanded that into there. So if we just take a quick look at that. Now we've got a tabletop looking like that. Next, we want to put some legs on it, so we might just grab this tool here, a column tool. And choose a side, oh no, sorry, wrong thing there. Oh, we don't want that linked at all. So, what did I say? I made the table thing. It's 25. So if it's 600, so that's going to be 575 for the length of the legs. Probably don't want them to be 300 round, so we'll make them say 40 mil diameter. We'll make those say metal. Stainless steel, so chrome will do. Just set the pins up. I tend to just make everything common pin type for ease. And then work out roughly where we're going to put our legs. See how big is my table? That's massive, righto. What I'll do is I'll just shrink the table a wee bit. So we'll just use the Control K command to take it from being 13 meters long to, say, 2.5 roughly. Sounds good. So if we want to put our legs, this looks like a little lumen, doesn't it? Where are we? So now.
Why did you measure that?
Oh no, it's because I didn't check how big I'd made that table. I just put a random spline around and hadn't really taken any consideration of the size. So I brought it back to a reasonable size. So now we've got our table there with 4 legs on it. We might just chuck a horizontal bar between the 2 legs at each end. So if we just go with a beam, let's make that 25 square. And we'll make that chrome as well. Make all surfaces chrome. Tidy up its pins. And we'll put it 200 from the floor. Right, so now I've got our little table. So the next step is to probably work out how we want it to orientate. Because it's a funny shape, it's probably not a good example, but if we say we'll make this here horizontal, so if we take that and spin it around. So if we want the basic orientation of the object just to be like with this bottom bar horizontal to start, we've got it like that. So the next step now is to create a view of this object we've created. So we grab all the elements we want to include in the object, and then we set up our parallel projection to be, and in this case, from above and from directly underneath. So X is 0, Y is 90, and Z is 0. So we want it to be nice and square when we place it. Sun doesn't matter. Go OK. And then head into our 3D view. So now this is what it looks like directly from top. So we grab all of the elements, so everything that's there. And now we go here and come down to save selection as. Well, in our libraries and objects sub folder here, then we come down to save selection as, and we go to object. Okay, so it's telling us that that's the view we're going to see in the floor plan. Sometimes you'll create an object, say looking down on it, but you want it to be turned 90 degrees in your folder or as your object. So you then create the view rather than from on top, looking from the end. So it's telling us we're going to see that. Now, where do we want to save it? In this case, I'll just save it in the embedded library, but we don't really recommend doing that. standard procedure. We'd rather you go and save it somewhere outside of the file and then actually pass it on to one of the BIM managers to have a look at it, and then we'll put it into the library. So we'll end up putting it probably into either the custom library if it's an object that we'll use in many projects, or the project-specific library if it's just going to be for that that project. So I'll just embed it at the moment and give it a name. So down here we will call it table. So obviously give it a name that makes sense as well. No use calling it Mika's object or Thursday 15th or anything like that. We want you know, to know what it is. And if you've copied, say, a brand name object or something, it's probably good to give it that name. And save. Now it's asking what parameters we want to use for that object. So the surfaces, so I've defined 2 different surfaces in the objects I've used. So we can leave those as they are because I've modeled them as I wanted. But if you decided in here you wanted to change that, well, you can easily change that in here. Same as the lines, so check your line types and your line pens and your materials if you need to. And if they've got anything, you can change those, but if they're okay, just go okay. And so now we will find, when we go to Object, Tool, we'll find that we now have this kidney-shaped table as an object. Now if I just chuck that on the ArchiCAD layer and okay, we'll place it here, and you can see that it's now identical to what we made. Actually, another point before I go too much further is actually when you model up an object, you can do it anywhere. So you can do it while you're in the project and just out beside the floor plan or whatever. But it's probably a good idea to actually go to a clean file and model the object in that file so that you can then save that file, and if you want to make changes to the object later on, you decide that something's different or you want some other option, you can do it in that file, because if you do it in the main file, you sort of delete it once you create the object, and then if you want to make a change, you have to go back and rework it. So yeah, save a separate file to the side somewhere and keep your object in there.
If I have like 20 objects that I have to do they all have to be in that?
Well, 2 ways of doing it. One is to have a file for every object, and just give it a name that matches the object and save them somewhere. Other option is to make each object on a different story within the same file. So as long as the object doesn't stretch over multiple stories, you could do that. And just make sure that when you go and create views that you just select the information you want from that story. So then you'll just create that object there. Okay, so now one thing you do notice though is that this object has got some pretty random hotspots. They don't, when you place your object, they're not going to mean anything. They're probably more of a curse than anything. So what we'll do is we'll go and tidy up our object now. So we come in here and same place, libraries and objects, but we'll go to Control, to open object, or Control-Shift-0, Control-Shift-O. So this is now the control panel for our object. Good practice is to start putting in the name of who made it, so that if the object is in a file and there's something we want to know about it or something goes wrong, at least we can go and find who made it and sort of discuss it a wee bit more. there are actually licensings here, so you can actually make it a commercial object that could be sold on, or just public domain. You can even, so if we made it commercial, we can set the password so that only those who know the password can use it. Good to put a little description here, so we'll just call it shape table and maybe XYZ brand. And you could put some keywords in there like this, sort of, so we're in the general public domain search, people will find it if you've uploaded it somewhere. So don't need to worry too much about that, or even just, you know, the basics, a table or a chair or something like that. So we can find them. So I'll just put that there. Table. So this is all the technical side now, so we don't need to, at this stage I won't worry too much about this, but we can, once you get comfortable with making objects, you can then start setting parameters that, like, say it's an object that comes in 2 sizes, you can start saying that dimension A can only be 600 or 1200, or it could be between 600 and 1200. It can't be any less, it can't be any more. So that when you go to enter those values on the main screen of the object, it won't let you enter something that's not going to work. But we'll go into that probably in a bit greater depth at another session next year. And again, you've still got another chance down here to start fine-tuning materials and surfaces and things like that, and pens if you feel that anything needs tweaking. But the thing that we wanted to come in here to do was tidy up the symbol, righto. So we come here to 2D symbol, and that's now showing us basically what we could see when we place that object. But now we want to make it more manageable, so we want to put some hotspots where they're useful rather than just in the 4 corners in the center. So maybe the center of that legs are probably a good point, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't bring curves in as curves, it breaks them up into segments. So you can't just simply find the center of that circle like you would normally in ArchiCAD. So you need to just say in this instance, so it was 40, so if we want to come 20 out from there, we know that's the center there, and 20. This one will be a wee bit trickier, so I'll just put a little red line through from here to there, and my asterisk in the middle, and is that right? Now what we can do is we could, where else could we put them? Say if we want to put them, say, a couple of strategic points. On the table. We don't want, during our plan, we don't want to see what's under the table, so we will go through then and get rid of the line work, or we could turn it into dashed lines or dotted lines if we really wanted, but we don't want to see that. Right, so now our table is just a tabletop, and if we really wanted to, we could actually then substitute all those segments for arcs as well. But I won't bother doing that, because this is then, and like if there was any, say, features on the top of the table that you wanted to show as well, you could sort of put some lines or fills or something in there, and then that'll transfer through into the model as well in 2D. So now to save that, we just go close, and close that, and we'll save, and voila, let's automatically change that back to our just our tabletop. Let's go back into there again. Libraries, objects, open object. If it's a sort of like a object that you've made, say a manufacturer's or a supplier's object that they just don't have a library, but you've found pictures and stuff online, you can also then come into the preview picture, and if you've found a photo of that object online, so I'll just quickly search for a table. Something that sort of looks roughly like what we've got. So if I just copy this image, you can then just paste your image into the preview picture and go save that. So now when we've placed it, or we've got our object, or we're looking for our object, it'll show up a nice little photo of the object. Or the other option is you can actually, if you can't find a picture, it's something that you haven't got a picture of or you've invented yourself, create a 3D view, photo render it, and then copy the photo rendering and paste it back into here. You'll see that basically the same things changeable, so if we change the legs to red, it'll change, so you've got the same control over it as you would as a normal object. In the building materials, I'm not going to affect this. What else can we do with it? I don't know why that pen didn't change colour. Not sure. All this is just typical normal stuff. So if once you've assigned your model to a layer and given it a classification, you'll still be able to pull up and add all the same data that you can add to any other object. If you want to restrict anything, just say that it is, wrong thing, sorry. So it's like a one-off type thing, like you don't get options as to sizes and stuff like that. You can tell it not to display some of the dimension or some of the parameters. So when we go here, trust this works. Yeah, so you don't get any say over size and stuff like that. So if it's a fixed element and you don't want, you want to place it, you want to avoid that risk of people inadvertently changing it because they don't know what they're doing, well, you can just turn all that stuff off and make it untouchable. So that's pretty much the basics of how to create your own object, and use it in ArchiCAD. So, thank you. You guys got any questions?
If I need to create furniture and I need the projections of it,
Yeah.
so how do I do
So you mean the
fonts and the...
Oh, well, that'll basically, once you create the same way as any other object. So once you place your, where are we? Once you place your elevation marker, you will get the same functionality as any other object. So there's the object, and there's the native stuff that I made it from. So I'll just drag that down. But yeah, now it's now you've got full function. Same with 3D. So if we go to 3D, we're going to see it exactly as any other object.
Does it automatically create all the different projections in the settings itself? Like if you open up the object settings and then you have a 3D view, elevation view.
Yeah, they're all just
Automatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah. Yeah, so another time we'll get into maybe making it more functional, like doing tricky stuff with it. You can put all sorts of information into the parameters.